I'm Camille. This is Camille Made, my channel where I get to talk about my obsession with knitting, and I am so excited about this video. It is going to be about my Reclaim striped pullover, and it's called that because I reclaimed a lot of Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino Pearl Gray from my Traveler's Cardigan by Isager knitwear. And let's just kind of start in this intro talking about the excitement that I get from getting to reclaim, recycle, and reuse yarn. Yarn has this amazing magical property to be reused. It can live so many different lives in so many different forms, and I think as fiber artists, we're probably continuously making. Our mind is always thinking about what can I make next, but I think it's also important to revisit what have I made. You can go to your closet and maybe there's like one or two garments or accessories that maybe you just don't use as much because you're like, oh, I didn't really love how I made that. So it's up to us to be sustainable creators, and that's something that's super important to me because I think in slow making, you are very intentional about the yarn that you choose, the projects that you decide to undertake. So yeah, it's really an amazing thing that we as fiber artists can take a cardigan and turn it into something new. So what even compelled me to do this in the first place? So I had the Traveler's Cardigan. It was probably the second garment that I had ever made as a knitter, so very much earlier this year. And I know it's crazy to say, but like now a couple of months down the road with a lot more knitting technical skills, I think that I create knitwear that just looks a little more refined than I did, of course, earlier this year. With that being said, beginner knitter Camille made a couple of creative choices that I would not make now. And so while I love the Traveler's Cardigan once it was finished at the time and the couple of months afterwards, I realized recently, especially as like the season's changing, it's getting colder, you would think, oh, this is the time to pull out that cardigan, but I wasn't really gravitating towards it. And I think it's because there were a couple of issues with the fit and some of the aesthetics that I just didn't love anymore. And I never want to feel that way about something that I spent so much time and money making. So yeah, I decided to frog it. But let's talk about like why I felt okay frogging it. So beginner knitter Camille knitted the cardigan following two different instructions for two different sizes, basically. So for the body, I knitted it in an extra small. So now, and I didn't gauge swatch, let's just start there. So when I tried to button up the cardigan, I could not do so without restricting blood flow to the lower half of my body. And then for the sleeves, didn't do increase or decreases, and I also picked up stitches for a size large. So I had these like crazy voluminous sleeves in comparison to a tiny body, and it was just entirely disproportionate. Now when I wore it open, it looked fine, but and probably nobody would have ever noticed, but I noticed. And I really want to feel like passionate and proud of the things that I knit. So yeah, that was something that was like always at the forefront of my mind. It's like, I'm not using that cardigan, and it's Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino. It's nice yarn. I really should be getting some use out of it. So when I went out shopping with my mom, I saw this ready-made sweater, and I just immediately fell in love with the color combination. I don't know why. I've never seen anyone. There probably has been someone who's knit this color combination, but I just haven't seen it. But it's this like plum purple, like pink stripe, with the main color being this like gorgeous, cool toned gray. And I was like, that gray is exactly the same as the pearl gray that I used for my Traveler's Cardigan. And that is when I was like, that cardigan is getting frogged. All right, so then I was like, okay, now where do we go from here? So I'm gonna take you in this video through kind of like the design process, choosing yarn, choosing patterns that I might want to use to accomplish this dream and remaking this sweater, and then of course the final object and my thoughts on that. So I'm really excited to have you guys here, and maybe by the end of the video you'll feel inspired to go into your own closet and take that one thing that you're not wearing but you love the yarn and frog it and turn it into something new. And if you do decide to do that, please let me know in the comments. I want to know. I want to be inspired by what you guys decide to do, because I think there's one more sweater in my closet that I'm not exactly sure it's going to exist for much longer, because it might also get frogged. I also do want to mention, I want to shout out my sister-in-law, Emma Rose. She is a ceramicist based in Dublin, Ireland, and she makes the most beautiful ceramics, and she has a website so you can shop her ceramics. But I just want to shout her out because I think she's just like one of the most gorgeous human beings in my life. I'm like tearing up, but I do love her a lot, and I think that yeah, I think she deserves a lot of attention for the art that she also creates. Like, how amazing is it I'm part of this like amazingly creative family. So yeah, go check her out. Probably the next clips that you're gonna see is me shopping for the yarn and taking you through my mood board for the sweater. So let's get to the project vlog, and thank you so much for being here. So I'm using Milanote to plan out this project. This isn't an ad. On the right, you can see some pictures that I pulled from Pinterest, and I want to talk about some of the design features that I want to include. So I'm going to use these thin pink stripes to sandwich a taller plum stripe. I want to include drop shoulder, so it's a drop shoulder construction, and after picking up stitches for the sleeves, I may perform a couple of German short rows. And as far as the fit of the sweater, I want it to be super oversized, and I don't want to crop it and just be super comfy. Okay, I wanted to come on here trying on one of the sweaters that I'm considering using as a blueprint for this project. This is the Hannah's Babadoo by Hannah Park. I think on social media she's known as Hannah in Analog. This is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's really well written, and I really enjoyed knitting it. This is knitted in Lion Brand Fisherman Wool Nature's Brown. It has the drop shoulder construction. It has a lot of positive ease, obviously, and also around the waist. So I really love this pattern and would love to use it as a reference. But there are two other patterns that I've wanted to consider using as well, and that is the Lakes Pullover by Ozetta Knitwear. You have that saddle shoulder construction. The feature that I love most and why I want to consider that pattern is the collar. I love that collar so much. And then the other pattern that I'm considering is the Sonia sweater by Petite Knit. Both of those patterns are knitted in worsted weight gauge, which is why I want to put them into the hat for using it for this project. And the Sonia sweater is the drop shoulder, and I feel like I saw that recently. I don't know why, I've never heard of that sweater, but I did see it recently on someone's TikTok, and I was immediately like, yes, that's the one that I want to use. So I'm trying to decide if I just look at all three of those patterns and pick certain features that I want and kind of Frankenstein them together, or do I just choose one of the patterns in its entirety and use it and just incorporate the stripe design that I want to, which I might be leaning towards the latter. And if I do, I'm kind of leaning towards the Sonia sweater just a little bit more. But hopefully I can look into those, make a decision, and cast on maybe today. I think that the mohair for my main color is coming in, and I'll have all my yarn together, and we will do a little haul of that when everything comes in. So yeah, I'm excited, and we're finally getting to the point where I can put the sweater on some needles. It's yarn day. I don't have words to express how excited I am to show you all of the yarn, because I feel like we're at that point where I can actually get this thing started. So let's go over some yarn. And I also left, this actually came in today, and I left it unboxed so we could do an unboxing together and complete the yarn haul. So, okay, let's see what's in this bag. This is just an old Claire V dust bag, and I use it for like my bigger projects. So whenever I'm working on a sweater, it usually goes in this bag. Okay, so of course you guys know about the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in Pearl Gray. I have 330 grams / 897 yards of this, and this is the yarn that I reclaimed for my traveler's cardigan. So that is gonna be the base. Let's open this bag because it's supposed to be the mohair that I'm gonna hold with it. Sorry, I'm watching these like 2 bugs on my window right now. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I purchased this mohair off of eBay. I love a good yarn find on eBay. Now, I'm gonna refer to this as mystery mohair because neither the seller or the mohair has any indication as to what mohair this is, where it's from, what's the content. I will say I don't have a wool sensitivity. So I'm happy with anything. It doesn't really bother me. So as far as mohair goes, I'm not the pickiest, but I do have preferences. Isager. But I'm happy with anything. I've knitted for the Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair before and also love this. So let's just take a look at what we have here. So on eBay, this was listed as 5 balls of like gray mohair found at an estate sale, unknown content. But this is what it looks like, and I have 5 of these, so let's hold it beside the pearl gray. Pretty good match, pretty good match. I will say, in comparison to the mohair that I usually work with, which is Isager, Isager is more of a lace weight. This is definitely teetering on the fingering weight, side. So yeah, this, we'll see. But that's good. I love that. It actually feels really soft. I think there's something else in here besides like silk or mohair. It feels fine. It smells fine. But yeah, okay, so this is gonna be the main color. We'll refer to that as color A. So there are 3 colors, color A, B, and C. Color B, I'm considering as the light pink color. So this is the Illimani Amelie in the colorway pink. I've done a project with this before. I did the novice slip over before with this yarn and I absolutely loved it. And Illimani Amelie is 56% mulberry silk, 40% baby alpaca, and 4% merino. Yeah, no, super cute. I think that's gonna look really good with this gray. I wanted to go for a lot of cool tone colors in the pinks and the purples. Warm colors would have really contrasted in a way that I didn't want to. And the inspiration sweater is quite cool toned. All right, and then for the purple, I have the Fiber Company Cumbria Into the Hills in the colorway High Cup Wines. This yarn is a, I'm gonna quote unquote, a lustrous blend of Masham wool, merino, and mohair. More precisely, it's 90% wool and 10% mohair, which is why I didn't buy a matching mohair, because I don't know if you can see in the sunlight very well, but it has its own kind of fuzz. Illimani Amelie definitely has its own halo for sure. You can see that. But then here, I don't think I wanted the sweater to be all fuzzy. I think I wanted maybe a variation in texture. So this will just be a little more of a woolly, which is fine. I think the fuzz from color A and color B, this is color C, will kind of, you know, compensate enough for the fuzz that maybe I don't get as much in this purple color. But let me hold all 3 of these together. Stunning. I don't think I could have found better matching colors than I did, so I'm really happy with these, and hopefully you'll see me casting on here in just a little bit. Okay, I'm coming to you guys live from my living room on my phone. It's dark outside, but I think I have made the decision, and I'm gonna use the Sonia sweater
from Petite Knit, but I am going to Frankenstein the sweater a little bit, and I'm going to use the collar instructions from the Lakes Pullover by Ozetta Knitwear to make this sweater. I think that's my final decision, and I'm feeling really good about it. I don't know if it's going to work. Okay, I wanted to show how I'm picking up stitches for the left shoulder. Petite Knit has this in her video series under the Sonia sweater, but she shows it by picking it up using the knitting needle. However, sometimes, especially with thicker yarn, I tend to kind of just struggle with keeping the stitch coming all the way through the loop to pick it up. I feel like it gets snagged or it just completely comes off the needle midway through. So it's just a little bit easier if I use a crochet hook and pull it through and pick up stitches that way. I keep a couple of metal hooks in my Chiagu case. Actually, let me just show you. Like kind of in the front pocket, I just have like a bunch of little metal needles for this purpose. It also helps if you drop a stitch. They are great handy tools to pick up that stitch. So yeah, that's how I pick up stitches for my sleeves, or if I pick up stitches for anything else, I just use my handy dandy crochet hook.
It's time for an update. In this update, I'm gonna talk about my feelings on the Sonia sweater pattern so far, my progress on the sweater, and the ranking of the yarns that I've used for this project. So, starting with my feelings on the Sonia sweater, I have no regrets. I am very, very happy that I chose this pattern. I cast on for a size medium because I wanted a really oversized sweater. I know that for the pattern, for sizes extra, extra small, small, and medium, Petite Knit indicates that you'll get a positive ease of around 11.75 inches. And so typically I probably would do a size small to get an oversized fit, but because I want a super oversized fit, I basically want to feel like I'm wearing a blanket. I cast on for a size medium, and I'm really happy with that decision. As far as sweater progress goes, I have finished the front yoke, the back yoke, and I've also joined in the round. So the pattern has you start on the back yoke, and for the, hold on, make sure I'm showing the right, for the back yoke, I basically knit 1 inch of the main color, color A, which is that knitting for olive, heavy merino, and pearl gray. And once I got to 1 inch, I decided, okay, now I can start my stripe pattern repeat. So I did 2 stripes of the light pink, which is that Illimani Amelie, that's my color B, and then I did 8 stripes of color C, which is the Fiber Company's Cumbria in High Cup Wines. So then I sandwiched the plum purple in another 2 stripes of the light pink. And then I moved on to starting over the main color, and I didn't know if I wanted to match the amount of rows done in the stripe pattern, which was 12, or if I wanted to make the next gray section a little thinner, or do I want to make it a little taller. I ended up going with the taller route and ended up doing 14 rows of the gray. And I know that's only 2 more rows than the stripe repeat, but 2 rows in worsted is a little more noticeable. So I'm really happy I went with that. And then I put the back yoke on stitch holders, which really for me was just leaving on the Chiagu cables and taking off the needles and replacing them with the stitch stoppers that came in my Chiagu set, and then working on the shoulders, which you work with German short rows. Once I finished the German short rows, I started on my stripe repeat again and just followed the instructions. Now, I ran into a little snafu when I connected the left and the right shoulders. So you connect the left and the right shoulders by backwards casting on a couple of stitches. And as I was knitting back and forth, I noticed that there was a misalignment of the rows. So essentially, when I turned the work to knit across the right shoulder, I was always 2 rows behind the left shoulder. So for example, if I was turning the work on the right shoulder, I'd be on row 10 and the left shoulder's on row 12. And so there was that 2-row mismatch. And because that mismatch occurred, and I would only, because that mismatch occurred, basically I would have to start a new stripe color after the last cast on stitch, which means that you would have a jogless stripe going down the middle. And I know, say what you will, I have tried every jogless technique in the book, and maybe it's my own skill set, but I've yet to find one that is truly jogless. So I didn't want a jogless stripe going down the front of my sweater. So I was torn on how do I get it so that I can add a new color stripe at the end of the row. So I took probably like a 30-minute to an hour break, just trying to figure out what do I need to do to make that happen. And then somehow my brain revisited the experience of knitting the Stripe Overload Cardi by Spectacle Streak. And I was like, oh, I need to basically, after the last cast on stitch, I need to break my yarn, take all the stitches on the left shoulder, so they were all the stitches on my left needle, and I need to transfer them, without knitting them, I need to transfer them over to my right needle. Now everyone somehow is on the same row, because the only time that the left and right shoulder would have been on the same row before making that decision was after I had knitted past the cast on stitches. So yeah, I was just kind of a mess, and if you don't understand what I'm saying, maybe just knit the pattern and then you'll see. But yeah, so then I broke the yarn, transferred all the stitches over to the right needle, and then I just reattached my new yarn on the left shoulder outer edge, and everything was fine, and I was able to proceed with the pattern normally without any more modifications, and was able to join in the round without any modification. So then I joined in the round, and now I'm just knitting the stripe pattern repeat. You will see in future clips that I'm gonna put the body on hold, because that's kind of what I do with all my projects, is I'll take a break on the body and I'll get the collar and the sleeves done, just so I feel like I've actually accomplished something in my project, and it motivates me to just keep going. If I keep knitting on the body, sometimes I get stuck on body island and I lose inspiration on the project. So that's what's probably going to happen, is I'm going to put this on hold. Yeah, so that's the sweater progress, and then I want to rank the yarns that I've been using. So number 1, I'm going to rank them from best, worst is a harsh word, but like the most enjoyable to maybe the least enjoyable. So the most enjoyable yarn to work with is my Illimani Amelie in that colorway pink. It feels like I'm knitting with butter, and I mean that in a way that it's like super smooth to knit with, just really delicious, and it just comes on and off my needles really nicely. I get really excited when I get to knit a pink row, because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna really enjoy this knitting experience. So I really love that one. And then second is going to be the Fiber Company Cumbria in the color High Cup Wines. And again, just really smooth. It's just not as enjoyable as the pink, but it's really enjoyable in its own way, and I can totally see myself knitting an entire sweater with just that yarn. And then the third one is knitting for Olive Heavy Merino. I did enjoy knitting with it when I did the Traveler's Cardigan, and maybe I don't enjoy it as much because I'm holding it with this mystery mohair. And now that I'm knitting with it, I feel like there's some kind of polyamide content in this, and because it just feels a little artificial. It's not unenjoyable to like work with, but it's not silk mohair. There's something else in here. So it makes it feel a little tacky when I'm knitting the stitches. So I notice that I will slow down my knitting pretty significantly just to not strain my hands. Yeah, so that's my ranking of the yarn. And I mean, I would use all of these yarns again in a heartbeat. Like it's not like one is just so bad and disgusting to work with, but that is my update. And so we're gonna go ahead and continue with the project.
I think it was so worth it. so it's a bit pricier than what I usually buy. But it's going to be like a really nice picture.
Okay, let's do update number 2. I wanted to do this while I was working on my collar because it feels like I have another 500 inches of the collar to do before I even dream about folding it down. So maybe this will be a good distraction to go over my update on how I'm feeling about the collar. I have my notes here, so if you see me looking over here, I'm just referencing those to make sure I include all the things that I want to say. Okay, let's begin with how much yarn I have used so far. So before I picked up stitches for my collar, I did do a quick weigh-in of the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino, and I had 201 grams left, meaning to get through this much of the body, I've worked 129 grams, and then I started on my collar. So we'll see how much it takes to knit the sleeves. Hopefully I won't be playing a game of yarn chicken here, but now let's talk about how I'm feeling using the Lakes Pullover collar on the Sonya sweater, and I'm feeling really good about it. I do want to preface that if you feel inspired to attempt this sweater, you do not need to purchase both patterns. The Sonya sweater is sufficient enough. I just wanted a reason to purchase both patterns. That way I had them in my knitting pattern arsenal for the time when I decided to knit the pattern sans stripe modification. So you don't need both patterns because they're similar enough that you can get away with just one. All right, let's talk about the similarities and the differences between the two. So as far as similarities go, they're both 1x1 rib, they're both folded down collars, and I found that you pick up the same amount of stitches for the medium Sonya collar as the medium Lakes Pullover collar. So that was really nice. And then as far as differences go, there's a slight variation in the construction, and there are different methods in folding down and binding off the collar between the two patterns. Let's start with a variation in the construction. So if you've ever worked a petite knit collar, you know that halfway up the collar, she'll have you slip the purl stitches. So you're not going to purl the purl stitches, you're just going to slip and then knit regularly, etc. And then after a couple of rows of that, you resume normal 1x1 rib where you're purling the purl stitches. And by doing this, when you fold down the collar, there's a very obvious point at which you fold down the collar. It'll fold down pretty seamlessly because of those purled or those slipped rows. And for the Lakes Pullover, there's not that design attribute. You're just gonna keep on knitting the 1x1 rib to the instructed length / desired length, and then you're gonna fold down the collar. So that's the difference. And it's a very minute difference, again, which is why I say you really don't need to be purchasing both patterns if you don't want to. Save yourself a couple, $7, $8. And then for the folding down technique, I don't feel bad disclosing this because it's not a petite knit specific technique, but when you fold down and bind off simultaneously, you'll pick up a stitch at the base of the collar, the corresponding stitch, lift it up onto your left needle, knit those two together, and then work the next stitch, bind off, etc. And then for the Lakes Pullover, it's a little different. And I've not tried this technique, but I'm very intrigued by it. It's similar to the petite knit technique, but there's an extra step, and that extra step just by reading it, reminds me of Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. I think I said that correctly. And because Ozetta really wants you to have a bit of a stretchy collar, she doesn't want it to feel as fixed. So I am really excited to do that when I get to it. I think I have really another 1 to 2 inches to work. I am working my collar in a half twisted rib because that's just what I like to do on all of my knit garments. That's what I'm doing right now, and I choose to work on the collar first because of course it pulls up on the shoulders a little bit, and that can affect your sleeve length a bit. So I do like to start with the collar first, and then once I'm done with the collar, I'll start working on the sleeves, and hopefully I'll provide an update either when I'm working the sleeves or after I'm working the sleeves and let you guys know how I'm feeling there. But yeah, I think the project is going super well so far. I'm really happy with the size I picked, how oversized it's looking when I try it on. The collar is looking awesome. I'm excited to fold it down, and yes. Okay, so that is update number 2, and I'll see you guys for the next update. I am having a not so happy Friday. I thought today's gonna be the day that I finish my collar, we can get to the sleeves, and everything's just gonna go so smoothly. We're gonna enter a flow state. Wrong. I have never made this mistake before. I have basically all of my sweaters, except for like maybe 1 or 2, have folded down collars, and I've always folded down the collar perfectly, never had an askew collar. What is that? That's the most crooked collar you've ever seen in your life. Yeah, I've never done that before. And yeah, that was an interesting mistake. So obviously I've tried to pick it out. It's proven to be a very messy situation. And so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and start working on my sleeves and see how much yarn that takes to get the sleeves done, how much yarn I have left for the body, and based on that, maybe I'll have enough yarn to just be able to cut the collar off completely and not have to worry about picking anything. So yeah, I'm really frustrated, and I can't believe that I made this mistake. I think at some point, like when I got around the collar, I just stopped checking to see if I was binding down in the right spot, and I don't know what happened. So I'm super frustrated, and yeah, let's actually go ahead and weigh how much knitting for olive heavy merino I have, to see how much yarn the collar actually used, so that I can enter that into my calculations, and estimate if I have enough to just be able to cut the collar off later on. But I think for now, we're just gonna go ahead and work on the sleeves and leave the collar in place, because like I mentioned before, having the collar already done helps you kind of assess how your sleeves are gonna drape and what length you should knit them to. So, I am so frustrated. Okay, so I have 178 grams left, which means that the collar ate through 23 grams. So, I mean, not that much, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting getting the sleeves done and the body done. Wouldn't be a true project vlog without a snafu, so it's okay. I'm just gonna smile through the pain and move on to working on the sleeves. Okay. I'm back with update number 3, less than 24 hours from update number 2, because as you've already seen, I had somewhat of a freaky Friday where anything and everything that could go wrong went wrong. So I want to talk about the problems that I've encountered with this project so far. And I want to emphasize, I'm still having fun, but like with any project, especially one that you're making some heavy modifications to, you're going to run into problems. But let's talk about the first problem, which we've resolved, was when I was knitting on the front between the left and the right shoulders. I found out that there was going to be a mismatch somewhere, and essentially I would have to do a jogless stripe down the front of my sweater, and I didn't want that. We've since resolved that issue. The second issue was that I had a crooked collar, and that was a Camille-made problem. I was pretty careless, and I just didn't realize when I was folding down and binding off that I had essentially created an askew collar and was binding off misaligned. So that was a problem, and one that I'm still beating myself up over, but That's life, that's knitting. And then I told you guys, okay, well, I'm just gonna leave the crooked collar in place and I'm gonna start working on the sleeves. Now, the Sonia sweater is written, and I even mentioned when I was like planning the project that I wanted to incorporate German short rows at the shoulder of the sleeve. I wanted to do that. Turns out doing that with stripes is a little more complicated, especially because I really wanted the stripes on the sleeves to correspond with the stripes on the body. And when I first started doing the German short rows, I had picked up stitches in the main color, which is that Knitting for Olive Gray, and I found out very quickly that I was going to be misaligned. And then so I tried a number of things and ended up frogging my sleeve 3 times, and by the 3rd time, I think it was like 7:30 p.m. and I was like, I don't think this is meant to be, and I don't think I'm in the correct mindset to even try to come up with a solution without further frustrating myself. So we just put the sleeve down, and I went on to my next victim, which was my collar. As you can see, the the crooked collar is gone. I had removed the collar, and I tried very hard to salvage what I could, and I actually salvaged 0 grams. I ended up, I think it's because the mohair is so wispy, and then I combined it with a twisted rib, and it just made for a really bad and tangled mess to where I couldn't salvage anything. So all of that yarn is gone. I think that was like, what, 28 grams or so. But the collar is gone. So that gave me a kind of like sense of peace, not having to look at my mistake, which was quite literally staring me straight in the face. And then my husband and I had dinner. I took a break. My husband and I had dinner, and then he put on Death on the Nile, the 1978 version. I picked up stitches for the collar and began knitting, and I actually did just a regular 1x1 rib, no half twisted rib, which is so crazy because I don't remember the last time that I just did a regular rib. And I think what scared me about a regular rib for a long time is when I had first started knitting, my tension wasn't correct, or consistent rather, and so I was ending up with like a rib that looked wonky and not consistent and uneven. So that's when I converted over to a half twisted rib, or sometimes I would just knit my ribbing inside out. But I thought, okay, I'm just gonna try a regular 1x1 rib, and I'm really happy with how it's looking. And I've gotten to the point where I can either do a tubular bind off, or I could knit double the length of whatever this is and then fold down. I think the reason I didn't was because I was slightly traumatized from the events that unfolded yesterday. So I didn't do that. And then before I went to sleep, I came to the realization that I don't want to play yarn chicken. So none of the local yarn stores around me carry Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino except for like one store, and they're out of the pearl gray. So I ended up going to Wool & Co.'s website and purchasing 2 more balls of the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino, because as much as like I just want to use what I have, this is a project that I have very intentional like design features that I want to include, that like oversizedness. So I wanted to make sure that I accomplished that. So I did purchase 2 more balls, so about 100 grams more of the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the pearl gray. Hopefully that'll come in next week. They ship really fast. And then this morning I woke up chirpy. I made my cup of coffee, and I decided we're gonna tackle this German short row issue. Essentially, I think I was trying to line up the stripes, like the first stripe of the sleeve with this first stripe on the body. And after looking and assessing the picture while drinking my cup of coffee this morning, I decided that I actually have to align it with the second stripe. So I picked up with color B, that light pink performed German short rows. Now I didn't follow the German short rows exactly from the Sonia sweater, but I just kind of let it be a guide on how to start my German short rows. And I've since finished that, and now I'm just knitting in the round with my pearl gray. So those are
my updates, and hopefully it's smooth sailing from here on out, because that took a lot out of me, and yesterday did. So hopefully it's gonna be a better Saturday and I can finish my cup of coffee and continue working on my sweater. So that is update number 3. This is looking so good. I think I'm at a good length where I'm gonna start the ribbing, just because it's probably gonna like take me to right here in this area, which is probably the perfect oversize for me, and I still have to block this anyway. The sleeves look really good. They're probably gonna block out and be right here, which is exactly what I want. I kind of wanted a fit of, like, if you know the Ingrid Dib Froya sweater, I kind of wanted that like oversized fit, like just really comfy. So I think we're gonna accomplish that. I'm gonna try this trick that was mentioned in Two Pearls in a Pod, their podcast, Sarah and Paige. They're probably like my favorite podcasters on YouTube. They have just such a calming, fun energy. I'm gonna try adding increases on the last round of knitting and then go into the ribbing, because then it doesn't cinch in the sweater as much and you maintain that boxier feel. Because of course, when you do like 1x1 rib, your sweater kind of goes in the bottom, and I don't want that. I'd like want to maintain this like big feel. So I think I'm gonna do that and then start the ribbing, and I think we'll be okay. I did order 2 extra balls of heavy merino, and I have about this much left to do the ribbing, which might be enough, but there might be a pause in the project while I wait for the heavy merino to come in from Wool & Co, and then I can resume my project, but we'll see. I think, yeah, I just don't want to play yarn chicken, so I might have to wait to finish my project, because I still need enough yarn to get around and do the actual like tubular bind off cast off. So yeah, I'm so happy with how this is looking. So excited. We have a finished object. The reclaimed striped pullover is officially done, and I am absolutely obsessed and honestly impressed with myself for this project. I cannot be happier that I frogged something and turned it into something that I basically want to wear every single day. I'm not gonna prolong this video any longer. If you've stayed this far, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. But as far as final thoughts go, I'm just gonna provide a total cost breakdown of the project itself, how much yarn I ended up with, and then this project vlog will probably be done. So let's talk about the cost breakdown. I'm looking over here over at my laptop. I didn't want to include the original cost of the knitting for all of heavy merino because it was reclaimed yarn. So essentially I just said that was $0. For the Sonia sweater, I paid $70.78 USD. Lake's pullover was $8. The Fiber Co. Cumbria High Cup Wines was $22 a hank. I had purchased 2, so that came to $44. Illimani Amelie was $24.50 a hank, and the eBay Mystery Mohair was $23.73. Bringing my grand total to $129.01, which is pretty good in my book. I know that there's a lot of discourse on the cost of knitting projects, and you never have to spend that much on a knitting project. It's really about the experience of what you get out of it, and as long as you love what you knit,
it doesn't matter what you spent. And then for the yarn that I had left over for the Knitting for Olive, I had 9 grams left. And for the Illimani, it was essentially 0 grams when I put it on the scale. It didn't even register. The Fiber Co, 90 grams. So I had to eat into the second hank, but just a little bit, just to finish the last stripe of the left sleeve, I believe. And then for the Mystery Mohair, I ended up having 6 grams left. So not too bad. I love this sweater, and I hope that you feel inspired to take something from your closet that you have knit before and go ahead and frog it and just turn it into something new. I know that if I could, I would wear this every single day. I highly recommend the yarns that I use, especially the Fiber Co. I thought that the deep purple was going to bleed when I did it soak, and it did not. So that was shocking and so exciting. For the rest of the year, I am planning to kind of stash bust a little bit. And with that being said, I have a favor to ask of you guys. If you have any suggestions for a stash busting sweater, cardigan, jacket project, please leave it in the comments. I think right now I'm kind of thinking about the striped cardi pattern by Loopy Studio. She's Evia here on YouTube, Evvia. That's what I'm kind of going towards right now. But if you have any other ideas, please let me know. And again, if you decide to frog something from your wardrobe and turn it into something new, also let me know about that. I know this was a longer video. This was my first project vlog, and I think it was longer because there were some hiccups. But if you enjoy this long form content, please let me know. If long form content isn't your thing, I'm so sorry. I'm a yappy girl. But yes, that is all I have for you, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.